Welcome back. Today I'm making this spooky black velvet skull cake. So to make this cake, I'm using my black velvet cake recipe, which is really just my chocolate cake recipe that I love. It's tried and true, but I use some black cocoa in it to give the cake batter a beautiful deep color. So once I had poured my batter into my pans and weighed them to make sure they had the same amount of batter in each pan, I banged them against the counter to get any air bubbles out, and then I popped them into my preheated oven. While my cake layers baked, I worked on my black frosting. So a great tip when you're making black frosting is to make chocolate frosting first and then add in a little bit of food coloring if you want. By having a really dark natural base, it's going to make it so much easier to get that deep black color that you're after. So I'm making my classic American buttercream here, which is just butter, salt, a little bit of vanilla, powdered sugar, and then some black cocoa. I'm also adding in some melted dark chocolate, which not only makes it taste absolutely delicious, but it also helps deepen the color. And then I'm adding in some heavy cream as well to help thin out the frosting a bit to make it easier to work with. So at this stage you can see the frosting is pretty dark naturally, but it's still a little bit brown. So I chose to add a little bit of black gel food coloring at this point, just to make the frosting color really match those cake layers. So now that our frosting is all ready to go, I wanted to level my cake layers. So once they had baked and cooled fully, I used a serrated knife just to trim the tops off. You can see they bake pretty flat naturally, but making them perfectly level makes the whole process of stacking and assembling a cake so much easier. So you can see they are all ready to go, and now it's time to make our cake. So I'm adding some black frosting to our 10-inch grease-proof cake board just to help secure our cake layer to our base. I'm going to be adding 2 layers of frosting between each cake layer, which sounds super indulgent, but it's a fun technique that I think is really pretty and makes the cut of a cake so beautiful. So in between adding each layer of frosting, I'm chilling the cake in the freezer for a couple minutes just to make it easier to spread the red frosting on top of the black. When you're doing this, you just want to make sure that your frosting is super evenly spread on your cake layers, so that when you cut in, each bit of frosting is going to be present in every bite. Once my cake layers were stacked, it was time to work on my crumb coat. I added a thin layer of frosting all the way around the cake using some leftover red and black frosting, and then I smoothed my crumb coat using my bench scraper. So this cake turned out to be really tall because I did use 2 layers of frosting between each cake layer. So I chilled that, which helped it kind of stabilize and set, and then I added my second thicker layer of frosting with my black buttercream. So I followed the same process of using my large offset spatula and then my bench scraper to smooth, and I let the cake chill in the freezer again for about 10 minutes. Once the frosting was firm to the touch, I used some Edible Art gold paint to brush some gold streaks along the side. If you wanted to, you could also use luster dust and some vodka to do this as well. Next, I used a Wilton 1M frosting tip to pipe some massive swirls on top of this cake. I wanted these to really be showstoppers because, as you're going to see in a minute, I am going to paint the edges, and this is much easier to do when you have big swirls. So I really let loose here, made these swirls as tall as I possibly could, and then I chilled the cake one more time to help those frosting swirls set. Once they were firm to the touch, I used my paintbrush and a little bit more of that Edible Art gold paint to paint the edges. I think that this look it's definitely tests your patience, but it's so beautiful and such a stunning way to decorate a cake. I always think it's worth it. So then the final step was to add on some skulls to this cake, because it is a Halloween cake. It's supposed to be spooky, and right now it almost looks like festive. So I used this silicone mold that I got on Amazon and a little bit of fondant to make my skulls. I was sure to dust my mold with some cornstarch to make sure that the fondant didn't stick when I tried to pop them out. I wanted these to look a little bit spookier, so I took some of my black cocoa and I just dusted it into the eye and nose sockets and also along the teeth. I really loved the way it made the skulls look, and it also helped them stand out a little bit more around the cake. So once I had covered the entire base of the cake with those skulls, which somehow perfectly fit, I was pretty shocked. Our cake was finished. So now it's time to cut in and do a little taste test, and I love this cake recipe just because it's so delicious. It's really packed with all of that black cocoa, dark chocolate in the frosting, and it's really just a delicious chocolate cake. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.